My name is Rear-Admiral John Newton. And I keep reminding myself, as an admiral, that I must have a few thoughts on water. So if you can find my first slide. Indeed, I appreciate the opportunity to express to you some of the changes taking place in the Navy and how water is a stimulus for a conversation about changing our approach to sovereignty in Canada's north. In my father's generation, and stories that I lived with through him, the Northwest Passage transit by the RCMP cutter St. Roch read like an all-Canadian Hardy Boys adventure. Sergeant Henry Larson, his small crew, and Inuit guides barely conquered the passage. They avoided by luck and split-second decisions, being crushed between ice and rock over the course of their 3-year voyage from 1940 to 1942. It was a sovereignty patrol in today's lexicon, and its ultimate goal, in my mind, was simply to conquer the passage. The Holy Grail, this Holy Grail of voyaging the Northwest Passage, is never far from the mind of the modern sailor, inspiring the voyage of Crystal Serenity and its 1,000 passengers this year. But as a side note, and I'm going to diverge for a moment, and considering the news coming out of the North last week about the Terror, the British warship of Franklin's expedition, Sergeant Larson once joked, recounting that he was cursed on his voyage that took 3 years. At Johaven, he had once exhumed the grave of an old hunter to investigate his death. The victim himself had robbed the grave of a friend to obtain a fine sled, fabricated from the mast of one of Franklin's lost ships. I mention this to highlight that voyages of sovereignty have for a long while now been part of the collective memory of the people of Johaven. The Canadian Navy itself in the 1950s and 60s was animated by the voyages of this ship, HMCS Labrador. It was a very capable but small icebreaker that did Cold War duty in Canada's north. Labrador led an industrial invasion of the north to build the DEW line radar sites in defense against Soviet bombers. Yet again, Southerners went north to implement their vision of sovereignty. In 1973, I, a young boy, 14 years old, unknowingly became part of this vision of Southern sovereignty. I was placed under the care of sailors at sea, an act of good parenting, I'm assured. HMCS Protector, a brand new naval replenishment ship, carried me north, voyaging widely around the eastern Arctic with its seemingly infinite supply of fuel. Once again, the government was demonstrating sovereignty by sending emissaries of the state to its remote hinterlands. And considering my limited exposure to anything greater than Boy Scouts, it was a formative experience to say the least. We visited the graves of the Franklin expedition at Beechy Island, the resettlement community of Grise Fjord, and the abandoned RCMP outpost at Dundas Harbor. It was a crash course in Canada's northern history. I was awed by the barren landscapes, the precipitous cliffs of Baffin Island that plunge vertically to uncharted depths. You could see the ice caps for 80 miles on clear days. And there was a huge concentration of icebergs in Baffin Bay. Wildlife was abundant ashore and at sea. Years later, as the commander of a frigate, I had the opportunity to retrace this amazing childhood experience. In Pond Inlet, I triumphantly anchored my frigate in August of 2005. I sincerely wanted to express gratitude to the elders and hamlet leaders for the gift of culture and land that had inspired me for 30 years. My memories of the most northerly hamlets continues to inspire my contributions toward the return of the Navy to the north, seen in our partnerships doing fisheries patrols, searching for the Franklin ships, and surveying modern charts. My Pond Inlet guests smiled at me pleasantly as I recounted the 1973 visit. I soon got to the part where the ship had hosted a movie night while at anchor in Eclipse Sound. I recounted how it seemed as though every teenager in the community had come to enjoy the movie and the treats. But as quick as I told the story of the movie, the mood of my guests darkened. Indeed, they remembered, but their memories weren't as uplifting as mine. A story of a creature from the deep that kidnapped the heroine to an undersea grotto is not something you tell to young people who have ample cultural stories involving sea monsters, and the movie had played right into their frightening myths. So I was shocked when I was told in all seriousness that the children of the community had suffered decades of nightmares following that voyage. Despite coming to the North with only the best of intentions, undertaking sovereignty and science tasks, the crew had inadvertently blundered in their engagement with Indigenous people. And there are examples of misunderstanding Canada's northern peoples, many far more egregious than the one I have just described. At the national level, these include resettlement, unreliable resupply, and residential schooling, elements of our northern history that the voice of the people has helped us understand as having been misguided and harmful. There are many good examples in our story of Canada's North, of a sovereignty vision. One of them is in the Canadian Armed Forces through the Canadian Armed Forces Rangers and the Junior Cadet Ranger program. And today I think that notwithstanding the negative aspects of climate change, perhaps we are at a point where a new course can be shaped. Most importantly, in my mind, being a sailor, is that the sea lanes remain the main arteries of the North. It serves no purpose to ignore that the Northwest Passage is much more forgiving now than it was during the era of Larson, Labrador, and the voyage of my youth. Affordable community resupply relies on the waterways for increasingly large volumes of food, appliances, vehicles, energy, and construction material. Mines export their ore across them. Tourists are flocking north in ever greater numbers. They're practicing extreme sports or voyaging in luxury cruise liners. There is work to be done in managing fisheries, patrolling new parklands, and national historic sites. Scientific study is set to soar, radiating from government-sponsored facilities at Cambridge Bay, Churchill, and Resolute Bay. Universities have increased their research programs and seek collaboration with government and industries to maximize their access to what remains a very difficult and dangerous environment. The demand for traditional arts and crafts is increasing. And into this changing environment, the Royal Canadian Navy will soon sail a very large, long endurance, and very capable Arctic offshore patrol ship. In 2018, the first of six ships, HMCS Harry de Wolf, will enter service. In my view, this class of ships presents an opportunity for us to reimagine how the government works in the North. Will we simply patrol as an act of sovereignty in its own right, contributing to military preparedness while helping do the conventional programs of fisheries or hydrography? Alternatively, could we embrace new opportunities to encourage and aid the Inuit themselves to deliver programs and other activities that contribute to social and sustainable development? And in extension, they deliver sovereignty. It is this subject that I believe holds ample promise. While I am excited by opportunity to build new relationships with our core maritime partners, I would suggest to you and the others in Canada who drive programs that they should consider how their programs that enable northern peoples could engage the Navy and its new Arctic fleet as a supporting agent. Thank you for listening. Indeed, I think it's an exciting time for Canada. It's an exciting time for our North to have 6 purpose-built ships. The Royal Canadian Navy prides itself in going with purpose wherever there is water. Thank you.